All right, we're looking at taking a fraction or a mixed number and expressing it as a decimal. We're going to start with one of the simpler ones here. Number 13 is 1/8. The process that I use, the method I teach my students is they have to set up the division problem correctly. If they don't, then they get it wrong. A lot of times what students do is they think that they're dividing 8 because it's already down on the bottom, and that is the biggest thing that they have to fix immediately. They have to understand that this is a division problem, but what we are dividing 1 by 8. If they get into the habit of putting the denominator underneath the division symbol, they're going to get the wrong answer every time. So I talk about how I imagine this fraction tipping over to the right, and that when it tips over, the 1 falls into a hole or falls under the house on this part. So I'm not sure how else to describe it. It's just the first step in the process is knowing how to set it up correctly, and that the numerator is always the one that ends up being below the division symbol. So we go over that over and over again, and it happened today in class. I said it multiple times, and then when some of the students were turned loose to do this on their own, I come over and I see that he's switched, and so of course they can't get there because they've got them switched. So stress how important it is to start with that step to get it right. When we look at this, students start to recognize obviously that they are not going to be able to divide this in a normal way, so to say, because they know that 8 does not go into 1. And that's fine, because we have a way to represent something in math when something does not go in there. 8 goes into 1 0 times. And this is just like the regular long division they've learned, where there's so many different acronyms for it, but one we use here is divide, multiply, subtract, compare, bring down. And so we've done the division part right here. It goes in 0 times. Then we multiply 0 times 8, and we get 0. Now it's time to subtract, and we are here to compare, and then we notice that we're right back where we were, 8 going into 1 again. Okay, and so it's at this point where we recognize we need something to bring down, but we don't have anything. So this number is going to have to be smaller than the answer is going to have to be smaller than 0, so we're dealing with the decimal. So we put our decimal point in, and we make sure that above the division symbol we put our decimal directly above it, so that we end up with the right place value. So we're going to put a 0 here, and we are going to bring that down so that we can have something that 8 will go into, because 8 will go into 10. We know that 8 goes into 10 only once, and 1 times 8 is 8. We do our subtraction. Now, in 6th grade, I will just generally write 2 here. They should recognize that 10 minus 8 is 2, but I still have students that will want to go and borrow because they're just so used to doing it. So whatever works for you, but it is 2. So we recognize that 8 will not go into 2, so we're repeating the process. We place another 0 here so we get over to the hundredths place. We can bring it down now, and now we've got 8 going into 20, which we can manage that. We know that 2 times 8 is 16, 3 times 8 is 24, so that's too much, so we stick with 2. 2 times 8 is 16, and again we're ready to subtract. We should know that 20 minus 16 is 4. We can show that if we have to with borrowing, and we're down to 8 going into 4, and we realize we've got to do some more zeros. So a lot of my students at this point will recognize that they're just about done, because they know at this point what's coming next. They know they're going to get 40, and they know that there is something that you can multiply by 8 that will go into 40 evenly, and they recognize that it's 5, because 8 times 5 is 40. So they kind of get the clue that they're finished almost at this point. So we put our 5 up here. 5 times 8 is 40. We subtract and get 0. We talk about how Once we get 0 as a denominator, we know that this is what we call a terminating decimal, and that there are no more place values that we're going to be filling up. So we have figured out that 1/8 is equal to 0.125, or 125 thousandths. So we can go back to our sheet now and put the answer on there, and we can move on to another one. The reason why I like this method is because it works with any fraction. I mean, it even works with improper fractions, which to me are even easier because the numerator is already larger than the denominator. But this works with any fractions, no matter how big they are. Obviously, if you will simplify a fraction to its simplest form, it makes converting it to a decimal much, much easier. The ones that we're looking at today, I believe, already all are in simplest form, so the students didn't have to do that. They were just able to go straight to the division method. Where the major mistakes are made is in the multiplication and the division. For instance, they will, instead of saying 8 goes into 22 times, they'll put a 3 here, and then they'll get 24, and then they're sitting there going, I can't subtract 24 from 20, and we'll have to go back and say, well, that's because it doesn't go in there 3 times. So they have to be sure that they're not going over when they're doing that. They have to be sure of their multiplication and their subtraction as they go down through. And I tell them there's no easy way to do that except to be very organized and to be very sure of the numbers you're placing and what they are when you multiply them back, and that type of thing. So they really do, in long division, they have to take it slow in order to get the answer that they need. But if they can practice this process over and over and over again, it can become automatic and they can do really well with it.